Hey guys, and welcome to another Hobby Tips. So today we're going to be talking about paint. Which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones, what do you choose, what don't you choose, all that kind of stuff. Going along with the series of videos I've been doing so far where we're tackling all the initial things about the hobby that you have to make choices for in the beginning. And paint is another one that you really got to think about and decide where you're going to start. For most people it's going to be whatever paint set is in the hobby store where they're buying their first miniatures, and they'll usually get that. If you're into Warhammer stuff, then you're likely going to pick up some Games Workshop colors. But you might not. You might be in another hobby shop and they might have some different colors there, or you might even be in an art shop where they're selling some models, and you might pick up some art paints there, which is another thing. Again, I don't have any of those in front of me, but we'll talk about them towards the end. But to begin with, I've got a selection here of colors. These are all colors that I use, and each one of these brands is very popular and most people use them. There are a lot of other brands out there, which I'll hint on later, but for now, I think these three that are in front of me right here are probably the most common ones that you'll use and the ones that you'll see regularly in hobby stores in most countries around the world. So the first one, the elephant in the room, the biggest, we've got Games Workshop colors. So here we've got some of these Citadel ones, which is the brand that Games Workshop has. Okay, we've got a range of different things here. Now, then we've got Vallejo, and Vallejo, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, they've got their model color range, which I guess is their more sort of scale modeler sort of range of color, which is very, very good. All of these colors, incidentally, are mostly matte finish or low sheen. Then we have their game color, which is, I guess, designed more for tabletop gamers and stuff like that. So their color ranges are a little different, maybe less matte, maybe some brighter colors, things like that. The scale modelers are usually doing, historical figures, so they're often these kinds of paler, more drab colors. As you can see there, US Field Drab. So but you have a whole range there, and their colors are very good. And then over here we've got Army Painter, and Army Painter are another great company that do model colors for miniatures, and all their colors are very I would say they have a very classic style range, more like maybe akin to older style Games Workshop colors. So they're really cool as well. And yeah, what are the differences? Well, I guess let's get right into it. So, you've got Games Workshop here. Why would you use them? Why wouldn't you? Well, they've got all the colors you're going to use for most of your models. They're nice consistencies generally. They've got a range. They've built it so that you've got base layer colors, and highlight colors, and so on. So they've tried to give you a whole plethora. And when you're in the beginning and you're not very good at mixing colors, these are great because they're just giving you a step-by-step basically of which ones to use over what. So you'll have a gradient of colors going up, and it's all very self-explanatory. They also have a good range of washes, which are really, really useful. These shade colors for getting shadows, and they do these contrast paints, which can be very useful as well for getting shadows. A little bit harder to use, but they're great when you're starting out if you're trying to just get some definition. So they're probably a good core range of paints. They are expensive, but they are very good, and so I would definitely recommend those, and you definitely want a collection of them because they're going to inform a lot of your painting style. But they're not the only colors out there, and not the only ones that you could or even should use. I believe you really should be going for a range of colors to suit your purpose, regardless of which brand you want that nice good range. So you get the right blue, you want the right green, you want the right color, because they don't always have all the same colors that are quite right. There'll be some that are nicer, like for instance in this Army Painter they have this Corpse Pale, and if you see any of my tutorials I use this a lot. I really like this color. It's a really nice one, and you don't quite get that in the other ones. So you gotta find the colors that work for you for the type of miniatures that you're painting. So then you've got the next one, Vallejo. Vallejo's consistency is a little different. It's probably I guess the grade of Vallejo's paint is probably a little better than GW's, just overall. I also like thicker style paint, so all these here are thicker style, which is nice. I don't generally like too thin colors. I like it to be a bit thicker so that I can dictate the consistency with the water. And I think that's really important, especially when you're starting out, so that you learn how to mix water and how to mix colors and all that stuff. If the paint is too ready-made or ready from the pot, I find that you're not learning enough about that. So I would definitely suggest these brands over others, just because they are going to teach you to, you know, add a little bit of water and work with that consistency. So why would you choose Game Color or Vallejo generally? Well, they've got a lot of interesting colors, and a lot of these kind of muted colors and matte colors, which are really nice for doing certain things. They also produce a range of specialty, I guess, more technical type paints, like for doing rust and aging and weathering and those kind of things. They have a whole range of different colors which are really useful, so I would highly recommend picking up some of them. And again, their consistencies are really good. Their white's really nice in the Game Color here. They've got some really great interesting colors like this turquoise here, and they've got a whole bunch of these that are unique and slightly different from the Games Workshop ones. So I would usually recommend picking out a couple of those as well. And then finally we've got Army Painter. So with Army Painter, I really like these because these remind me of old school Games Workshop paints, and I tend to find that the newer consistencies are a little bit I guess alien to me because I'm really old school. So like I like some of these more thicker colors that are more close to like more original Games Workshop colors, and also the actual mix itself, the color itself is actually closer to older colors. So this one's a little bit like an old color, if anyone's listened to this that remembers a color called Regal Blue, and that's very close to that. So I try to find those. That's incidentally the same with this Field Drab here. If you're looking for a color that's close to a color called Graveyard Earth, which is no longer available from Games Workshop, but that's a really great base for doing bone colors, and I find that there's no color in any range that even comes close to that. It's such a great color. I don't know why Games Workshop stopped making it. Maybe they lost the license for the recipe or something, or whatever they decided, but it's a really great color, and this is about as close as you get to that. So if you're wanting a nice I guess matte, slightly pale brown for underneath your bone, this is great. 142, that's the number from Vallejo, US Field Drab. Grab that, mix it with your bone colors, and you'll see what I mean. It's a really great shadow color for bones. But anyway, that's a side note. So yeah, so this range has some great colors and some very nice bright colors like this Kraken Skin and a few others. It's really good if you're doing chaos stuff or anything that's a bit more out there. Then they've got some really nice colors, and they're good to work with when you're starting out. So I guess, and all of these here are roughly a similar price range. So I guess my recommendation here is, you're probably going to start out with, let's say, 10 to 20 colors in your Games Workshop, and then move out into maybe a small starter pack of your Vallejo. Like these do like a little Game Color kind of starter pack, and they're great too, and I would recommend that. Just start out with your paint packs that they give a range of colors. Probably not the Games Workshop one, but these other brands do some nice ones, especially Vallejo, and I'd probably grab those because they're going to be more useful to you, and then sort of add as you go. I think ultimately Games Workshop does really great ink washes and shades, and I definitely like using them, so I would probably still be using those and their contrast and so on. But then I would branch out for some of the other colors in other ranges, and so that you're ending up with maybe somewhere between 30 and 50 colors, I guess. Initially that's probably where you're going to have in your collection, and then you're going to build out from there. It sounds like a lot, but it's not really. When you're painting a bunch of different armies over a period of maybe a year or 2 years, you're going to build up those colors, and that's where I'd begin. There are other brands out there, so let's talk about that. So in addition to, I guess, these three, which I would consider to be like, standard core ranges of colors, which is going to get most people through the hobby, I think that there are then a lot of other companies out there producing paints. So I haven't used all of them yet, but you'll see a lot on other YouTube videos, those colors. So Scale Model, I think, is one of the brands, or Scale something 52 or some number anyway. There's a bunch of them. They're all in America, so like if you're not in America, you're probably not going to get access too much to those colors. And the one called Chimera, I think, there's a bunch of them there, and apparently they're all really good. In terms of metallics, That's another thing. Again, a lot of those brands do some really nice metallic colors. Vallejo does a really good range of true metallics. If you're liking that, they're probably a little bit better than the GW ones. So if you're wanting that really strong metallic colors, then that's also a place to look. And then finally, and in terms of price, I think they're pretty much comparable to these. But there are some other brands out there which a lot of painters do use and do recommend. So if you can get access to them, definitely try them out. But I wouldn't recommend it in the beginning. I would just stick to the main ones here because I guess they're going to be more user-friendly, I suppose, and you're not going to find that get sort of stung by buying a bunch that in the end you don't really like or don't work with. So I'd start with these first because they're tried and tested. And then finally we have art colors, or fine artists like Winsor and Newton and so on. Those kind of ranges of paints for painters and illustrators, people that work traditionally. Now some of those are really good and some of them aren't. Whichever you want to try, initially I would recommend not actually going into any of these. You'll see a bunch of YouTubers that are using them and stuff like that, and that's great. They're all experienced painters, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it when you're starting out. They're going to be harder to work with, and it's got to do with a lot of technical stuff to do with the paint itself. But essentially, the paint's going to break down at a small scale when you're watering it down and stuff like that, and the way it dries on the surface and so on can be really, really problematic. And when you're starting, it's going to be hard for you to wrestle with that. So I wouldn't recommend using them, but they can be good. But if you are going to try to purchase some, either because of cost restraints or whatever, and it's cheaper to get them in these bigger tubes, make sure whatever brand it is artist quality. Don't get their student qualities or anything like that. Those paints are never going to work well on your models. And when you're new, you're never going to be able to wrestle with that inconsistency. So if you do end up wanting to purchase some of those sorts of paints, get artist quality, because the fineness of the paint is going to work better on the kind of scales that we're working on. So but yeah, otherwise I would probably steer away from them. And that's the same with oils as well. Everything here you're seeing in front of me is acrylic paint, water-based. I would not recommend using any oils whatsoever when you're starting out. If you're experienced, sure, go for it. There's plenty of YouTube videos that show about oils, but I don't believe that they're a good place to begin when you're starting, because they can be very, very difficult to work with, and they're also toxic. You've got to use spirits and so on to wash them down and do all the different things that you do with that. So I wouldn't recommend it to begin with. I would start out with acrylic paints. And so finally, I guess my last recommendation is undercoat sprays. So again, I would there's a few brands out there, but I would just stick with GW's ones in the beginning. They've been doing this for 30 plus years, and they know how to make spray cans, and all of their colors are great. I've used them all my life, and they're awesome. They are expensive, but they're going to work well for you. And they're going to work. And the only other thing to worry about when you're using sprays is temperature. So obviously you don't spray in too cold temperature or too hot temperature. It's got to be like, a mild day, somewhere in the 20 degree mark if you're on the side of the world that uses degrees. I don't know what that's in Fahrenheit, but anyway, or Fahrenheit? Yeah, whatever it is in America, whatever they use, or they use like feet and shoes and rabbit's feet. I don't know how they measure it, but anyway, in the rest of the world we use Celsius, and it's around 20 to 25 degrees is fine. You don't want to go past 30 degree heat. That's not going to work for you. So anyway, but yeah, I would just stick with GW for spray cans, and you should be fine. So yeah, that's my thoughts on paints and where to begin. And I think you should be fine. You're going to spend somewhere in the vicinity of between $50 and $100, I think, ultimately on paints over the course of your early days in the hobby, and that's pretty standard. Most of these colors are around between $4 and $6-7 each, depending on the brand. That's in Australian money. I don't know what the conversion rate is in your country, but it'll be somewhere around about that. And you should be fine. So you're going to spend maybe, what's that? I guess maybe 50 colors or so, 20 colors. Yeah, so you're going to spend maybe $100 and a bit, I suppose, ultimately in the early days, maybe something like that. Maybe a bit more, 150, I suppose. It sounds like a lot, but when you space that over maybe 6 months or something, it's not so bad. You're only buying a few colors at a time, and they last for a long time as well. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe and hit that notify button if it's been helpful for you. Really helps me out. But otherwise, yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.